I want to pivot right to our conversation this morning with Jeff Coleman, who is on the telephone with us. Our conversation is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Of course, Jeff Coleman we knew for years as a state representative whose 60th district included a portion of Indiana County, but then he chose to step away from political office, not that he was away from the political arena, and now all of a sudden he's jumped back into a campaign. We want to ask him about that. Jeff, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you, Todd.
It's good to have you back on the air with us. It's been a century and a half or so, but
just a few years and 4 kids later.
Yeah. So here we go. You were running for lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, and the obvious question is, after you've been away from political office for so long, why jump in now?
Well, I think the reason that I ran the first time, which was a really deep concern about politics and the state of politics. And if you remember, I ran against a longtime incumbent, but in 2000, my commitment was to run a campaign that was positive and about the issues. Dave Reed did the same thing after me, did not attack his opponent. And 17 years later, after I've left office, I think everyone can agree the state of our public discourse, civility has just blown apart, and I have never seen it this bad before. Now, people say, well, what about the Civil War? What about other periods in our history? It's always been like this. I just don't agree. I think if you're in politics, you're in it to fix people's problems, to solve problems that people are facing, not the government solving, but being the representative and the voice of the people. If you can't hear each other talk in debate, nothing happens. If you're a Democrat and a progressive or a conservative like me and a Republican, you should be very concerned about the state of of what's happening in the public square. So that's why I'm getting in, and I'm really have been so encouraged at how receptive people are to this message. They're ready for the playground politics and the name calling, I think, to be over. At least a lot of people that I'm speaking to are.
Yeah. You picked up the endorsement of Senator Pat Toomey. I know that's very precious to you, and I know from what I've been reading all along here since you declared that there are a number of people excited to see you back in the arena. That must be pretty heartening for you.
Well, it's been encouraging. I don't take any of that for granted. I know I'm very thankful to have the support of my friend Dave Reed and Don White and Senator Joe Pittman, Abby Major. But ultimately, this is about ordinary people who are just exhausted and fatigued by what's happening in politics. I told you I have 4 kids now. They're ages 16 down to 7. And a couple of years ago, I tried to get them to watch a presidential debate, and I turned it off. And I didn't want them to see politics or experience politics this way. I believe that you can be from different parties, have different beliefs, wage war, shake hands, but do something. I think people are in this state right now where they just don't believe anything that comes out of the mouths of politicians, and sadly for some good reason.
Yeah. All right, so Lieutenant Governor and the Lieutenant Governor's role in Pennsylvania is one that many people probably have no idea what the Lieutenant Governor does besides President of the Senate. We've seen how that has worked out in the current climate. But what does the Lieutenant Governor do, and what can you do as Lieutenant Governor?
Well, first job of the Lieutenant Governor is to be prepared to be governor. And I think to be prepared to be governor means you have to know what your principles are. You have to know something about the duties of how to run a government, how bills become law, how an agenda gets passed. The number one responsibility of me as a campaigner is to make sure the next governor is a Republican. But after you get elected, you have 1,460 days to pass that agenda. And the Lieutenant Governor's office is a very strange place. It's actually physically in the Capitol, located right, if you walk up the Capitol steps, it's right there, dead center. And if the office is being used properly, it is the switchboard, the communication between the House leadership, the Senate leadership, and the administration. When all of those 3 things are coordinated, you can do some great things for people. When there's bickering, rancor, no communication, kind of the tribal competition between the House and the Senate, nothing happens. And, as Dave Reed and others who have been in leadership have experienced, you have to have someone who is humble enough to not want to be the governor, but also be prepared to be governor at the same time.
It has been a pretty poisonous atmosphere for quite some time in Harrisburg and in Washington, and even in some local precincts as well, even here in Indiana County. It's been surprising to me how rancorous it can get and how quickly it can turn that way. And I know that social media has a lot to do with that, and people can vent. They can vent in that way. But when you get right down to it, in order for this government system to work, it has to be a system that everybody is given that same equal footing to make their opinions known and to craft the legislation that they wish to have crafted, or to provide the leadership and direction that particular person believes it should go, and then let the voters decide. Am I right in being that optimistic about what it should be?
Yeah, that's right. It's when you step onto the floor of the House of Representatives or the State Senate of Pennsylvania, you're equal. Doesn't matter if you have a GED or you went to Harvard or you went to West Point. You're an equal member representing the people of your district. The rule book says when I debate someone on the other side, I have to do it by calling them gentleman or gentle lady. I have to speak through the speaker. I can't call you a name. The rules or the lack of rules that you experience in social media, you have a very different environment in the Capitol. So what I think many people would like to see is kind of a big brawl and a throwdown, almost wrestling style, in the Capitol. And people mistake that for fighting. So we want people who are fighters, who will throw a punch. What I'm trying to help people understand is real fighting is persuading and convincing and adding, not subtracting. And you have to grow the number of people who want to support your bill. So if you're pro-life like me and you care about passing a life amendment after Roe v. Wade is overturned, you have to do it in a way that's civil, that's kind, respectful, and guess what? Very loving to people who have a very different view than you. Mm-hmm. And for people who self-identify as Christians, people who bring that into the public square, that has to be the signature trait of your public service. You can't leave your Christian virtue, your kindness, your love, your gentleness, your self-control at the outside. And when you're elected to office, all the rules get suspended. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've always said about social media is, and I don't do social media, but I see the comments that come in here from time to time. It's like it's a perpetually ripped off scab, and the pain that brings with it. Jeff, as Lieutenant Governor, what would be some of the priorities that you would like to see in the direction in which Pennsylvania goes?
Well, I have strong opinions about really bringing parents back into the conversation about the schools where their kids go to. I believe in strong public schools, but I think we have to have a system where parents are given real options, aligning with their values and the goals for their child's life. Every school cannot provide everything to every child, so let's give some options. I really believe we've got to refocus our energies on small towns to make sure that, places like where I grew up in Apollo, Pennsylvania, places like Homer City, which could be erased off of the map in the next 20 years if we don't really have a vision for small towns. I think you've got to prioritize that. One of the duties of Lieutenant Governor is overseeing the fire commissioner. And I think everyone knows in the 1970s we had over 300,000 volunteer firemen. We're down to about 30,000. And if you're not Indiana Borough, but you're one of these other outlying communities, and you can't afford to have a paid fire department, the level of public safety that a taxpayer expects is going to go down dramatically. So those are areas they're not front page glamour, Fox News, CNN kind of issues, but they're really important to people who live in Pennsylvania and care about our quality of life.
Yeah, I know fire companies do keep track, and so do other agencies, of how many times a fire company is called upon and fails to respond because they just don't have anybody show up.
It's fire calls, it's police calls, it's the response times. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so those are some of the items on the agenda for Jeff Coleman. What's the campaign been like for you, and where are you going next? You're in Erie this morning, right?
I'm in Erie today. I've got a full day at Erie, and then hopefully heading back to Lemoyne, Pennsylvania, a little borough on the Susquehanna where Rebecca and I have been living. And she's a local borough councilman there, and having a great experience with that. Look, I've enjoyed every minute of this. Last night in Armstrong County, it was story after story of people who have gone on, and people who have lost, and people who have gotten married, and grandbabies. And it has just been so encouraging to me that after this many years away from politics, people would be willing to hear what I have to say.
Yeah, back in the neighborhood anytime soon?
Yes, we'll be back. We'll be back soon. I was hoping to get back to Indiana Thursday. They have the pretzels and petitions that Randy Degenkolb is having over at the Freedom Church Social Hall. But it looks like the schedule is too tight. But if any friends are listening and are able to sign my petition, they'll be there at the Freedom Church Social Hall from 6:30 to 8. Would love that. But we'll be back soon, and planning on bringing all the kids and Rebecca on the next trip through.
Looking forward to it, Jeff. You need to stop by the studio someday soon as well, okay?
You have my word. I'll be there. Thank you, Todd.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
Jeff Coleman, a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, former state representative whose district did include a portion of Indiana County.